So
So
it's
where
like
does
I
that come
understand
from?
her sexual pull. It comes from childhood trauma in sexual nature. So I've been hypersexual since I was a little girl because of trauma. I've grown a lot since then, and I've grown in the way that I dress. I've grown in the way that I present myself, the way that I speak, in the way that I speak to men. I used to automatically come on to men for sexual attention. I work very hard against these things. So it's like I understand when you don't have that something that you're fighting against, it's easy to be like, "Oh, just stop doing it." But just know that if she's not doing it every day, she's working on it. That's all I have to say.
Yo, Fantasy Island girl, I just want to say this. Thank you for saying that. Like you get a lot of heat from people or whatever, and that was a vulnerable point where I got an understanding of how you operate, you know, because you've said a little bit about that. So I appreciate you saying that.
All right. You want to go ahead, let's let go since you had the floor. You want to go ahead and comment about you having Brittany Renner's back?
Okay. So I look at this in two different ways. One, the podcaster knew exactly what he was doing and knew exactly what he wanted out of these two people. Who in the world goes out and gets the biggest fools on the entire internet? It was easy to understand that either Brittany Renner is going to do something stupid or Charleston White was going to do something stupid. That was expected. And in my opinion, she probably needs the money because PJ Washington's contract, he just got a contract, but according to what she was saying before, she wasn't getting a lot of child support money. I don't know if she has a job or works anywhere or whatever. And altogether, I think she has a certain amount of social anxiety that keeps her from being able to do content. So she just said stupid. Because if you look at anything that she says, she always tries to be funny. She has a little voice that she uses. She tries to be funny, but she doesn't know what she's doing. So, in my opinion, she's still trying to find some type of way to make money on social media without just being stupid, goofy, or sexy, right? So, that's one thing. I think that part right there brings her anxiety every time she goes on camera. She's trying to do something, be something, but she doesn't know how to do it. And then at the same time, I can only assume she needs the money. So she goes on a podcast knowing that she doesn't necessarily want to be there. And when women do things that they don't necessarily want to, like as an example, strippers, they go to work knowing they're going to be, getting rubbed on by random dudes. What do? They got to drink something. They got to snort something. They got to pop something in order to get them in that mood to ease the anxiety. So, because when she came to tonight's conversation, she also was drinking. But, we all be drinking because, down in the basement, there's all kinds of alcohol or whatever. But everybody at the podcast who is used to being around each other knows what to drink, what not to drink, how much to drink. But with her, I'm assuming that she has a lot of social anxiety. So she gets around us, she got to drink because she ended up getting drunk when she was around us. But she didn't do all that stuff. Why? Because I was there. Why? Because Ace was there. Why? There were other men, like Trip was there. So there were masculine men there who ain't really gonna play that mess. When she did the podcast with Andrew Tate, did y'all see her act the fool? No. So what I'm getting at is, yes, she is problematic. Yes, some of the things that Fantasy Island Girl said, I agree with. She's trying to make some changes, but when you've been something for like the last 10 years, it's difficult for you to just wake up one day and say, I'm not going to do that no more. It's like a fat person, I don't want to be fat no more. There's a lot of stuff you got to do. A poor person saying they don't want to be poor no more. You got to get your credit together. It's everything that you got to change takes at least a year, maybe 2 years. So when you look at this woman being who she is, in my opinion, she's this lost. I'm not gonna say we don't see her as a whole or anything like that. She's trying to make some changes, but I think she ain't got no money. She got a lot of issues. At one time, she was living with her mama when she was getting the child support with the child. So I just think she's really lost. And they call her on this podcast, and when she heard Charleston White, she was probably like, "Oh, okay, this gives me an opportunity to turn up." Kind of like what Trev said. I'm finna get in here and turn up. And she turned up a little too much, drank a little too much, because she don't know what she's doing. Like, we're on social media on a normal basis. We go on the podcast, we can have a drink, we can hang out and have fun. I don't think she can do that because, one, I don't think she got no friends. Two, she ain't around other people. And three, she has all this anxiety and everybody look at her like she's a hoe. And my last point is this. I easily can say that when PJ Washington was brought up, she literally twitched. She literally was like this, right? Right then and there, it was up to her to set boundaries before the podcast started and said, don't bring up PJ Washington. She didn't do that. So that's on her. She got triggered when they brought that shit up, and all of a sudden, she just went nuts. But the reason why she didn't act like that with us, and the reason why she didn't act like that with Andrew Tate, it was because it was men around. There were no men on that podcast. Man, that's the reason why she went nuts.
I believe that she did request them not to bring up PJ Washington, and they do that a lot in these interviews. They have certain things that they tell you they're going to speak on, and they ask you what your hard no's are, and they usually get these things done out front. And she's done a lot of interviews by now, so I think she did, and that's why she turned up on them personally, because they did that on purpose, just like DJ Academics does sometimes. But I'm not saying that for sure because I don't know. I'm just saying it's very possible because people come out and complain afterwards about how they've already discussed they weren't going to discuss certain things, and then on the podcast live they'll do it. So it's like, how do you react? Do you maintain your frame and say, oh, I don't want to comment? Then it's going to be a bunch of stuff. Do you make a comment and you fumble? Then it's going to be a bunch of stuff. Do you turn up and completely distract from the subject? It's going to be a bunch of stuff. That's why they asked not to talk about it.
JR, did you watch the podcast through and through, right?
For the most part, yeah.
Who brought up PJ Washington first?
The podcaster. I watched it.
So he said, what happened with PJ Washington? Or did she bring up the fact that she was in love and all of this bullshit?
That happened after he asked.
So she can lean into the conversation, have a decent conversation at the beginning, but all of a sudden she started turning up. See, the thing is that she doesn't mind PJ Washington being brought up as long as it's to her benefit. As long as people are siding with her and agreeing with her and saying, hey, yeah, we see where you're coming from. She has no problem with PJ Washington being brought up. When she turned up was when somebody in that room defended PJ Washington. That's when she had a problem. She don't have a problem with PJ Washington being brought up. She hates when PJ is brought up against her. When somebody defends PJ Washington, now she got a problem.
Who was against PJ? Who was against her involving PJ Washington?
When a guy behind her asked about PJ Washington or something about that, she threw a water bottle at him.
Oh, that's what he said? Okay, I didn't
hear
what he asked. Yeah. I seen that, but I didn't know what he said. Okay.
So like she does this a lot. Like she only wants this to be brought up when it's in her favor. When we talking about it and people are riding with her or siding with her, then she can be cool, calm, and collected and act like she got some sense until somebody is against her.
But like, isn't that what a woman does?
I don't care what a woman does. That shit is unnecessary in today's age. We gotta stop excusing that type of behavior, bro.